Homeschool moms. I'm so glad you're here. I just finished 2 cups of coffee, so I can't bring a third, or else I'm going to be trouble later. But we just had our very first snow here in British Columbia, Canada, and it is absolutely stunning outside. The sun, or the lack of sun, is not my preference, but I really love watching it. I'm going to share a little bit of what it's like living here in British Columbia in a little bit. But I am so pleased today to chat with Sue. She is the unschooling mom. She is a unschool mom to 3 grown unschoolers, like they're well grown in their 20s and 30s. She's a grandma now, and she's still in this space so she can encourage and inspire us to take on that role or that path of unschooling and do it confidently, because there's certain ways that our culture engages education, and we assume that there really is only one right way to approach post-secondary school or to approach high school or just approach education in general. And it doesn't actually have to be that one path. It can be various paths. And so she's here to help give us confidence. And y'all know me. If you know me, I'm Teresa. I'm the certified life coach, homeschool mentor at Homeschool Mama Self-Care. And I'm also a homeschool mom of 4. 3 are grown. My 4th is in his first year of high school. And I have been doing this for more than 1.5 decades, less than 2. And I'm here in this space as well as a life coach and mentor for homeschool moms, primarily homeschool moms. So it's a pleasure to meet you. You're always welcome to introduce yourself to me, because though I be on a screen, I'm a real person over here, and I have real conversations with homeschool moms all day long. Let's see, I'm going to request that Sue joins me. I hope you're here, Sue. Questions about Sue or any questions about unschooling? One of the areas that I focus on is a discussion on deschooling. Often people, hi, Sue.
Oh, it works. Oh, good, good.
Hey, so nice to meet you.
I wasn't sure about this little camera thing I have. Nice to meet you. Hello, hello.
Tell me where you're from.
Texas. I'm outside of Austin.
So you don't have snow like I do.
I do not. It's actually incredibly muggy.
Is it?
Yeah, 70s, 80s.
I
wish we had the snow.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I want 4 seasons. I want 4 seasons.
I have to say, I do like the seasons. I do, but I haven't lived anywhere where there weren't seasons. This is the most seasonal I've ever lived, and it really does get dark and gray between about November and February. And seasonal affective disorder is common in these parts.
Right. Where are you again?
British Columbia,
okay.
Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a really beautiful seasonal shift. So I've not got that like wild, super cold Canadian thing going on. I really like it myself.
We lived in Anchorage for a while.
Oh,
we were in the military, so we moved around a lot. And they said that, if you were in the central part of the continent, it was colder. Anchorage had the water to kind of buffer it a little bit. So
it wasn't crazy cold.
Not crazy cold. I mean, you still had that. You have to sniff out the door to see if your nose hairs freeze or whether the kids can play outside or not. Then it's 3 degrees.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm obviously Canadian, so I'm Celsius.
Yeah.
So when we would get to, I lived in northern Alberta. So when we would get to the -30 stage, which I don't know what that is, or if that's zero.
I don't either. Sounds dreadful.
I just have not had to learn that. But if it got that cold, you're right, your nostrils actually froze together. And I remember my teacher saying at recess, you can go outside until your nostrils freeze together.
I used to do that because we homeschooled the kids. And so I'd open the back door. Nope, not yet. It's funny.
A whole different world where you are now then.
Oh my goodness, yes. Very hot, very hot.
Homeschool then in various places as well?
Yeah, we did. We were in Alaska. We were in California. We were in Wichita Falls, Texas, and then in Austin.
Yeah, that is huge.
Now, we moved to other places, but the kids were still younger, and so we weren't.
Yeah. we did a ton of traveling too. We went into Alaska, but we just went, the Skagway
Mhm,
area where everybody
mhm,
was
mhm.
super interesting though, as we're actually
Oh,
reading about the gold, what is it? The gold, I want to say gold mine, the gold rush.
right.
And
And
like,
panning for gold in the water and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
like in a really powerful way to learn.
Oh my goodness. Yes. We traveled a lot. That was a very fun aspect, having that freedom to be able
Yeah.
to go when it was the right time to go and not because somebody said, here's your window. You and 45 billion other people go now.
Exactly. Yeah, we are suckers that way because we're like, no, we're not going anywhere in the summer.
Right.
We don't do that.
Right. The lines are longer. The price is higher. Why?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a very interesting way to learn. I'd have people always ask, are you going to bring the curriculum there, like the formal stuff? And I'm like, no. The first time we went to rural Africa, I did bring
Yeah,
some stuff, and then I realized completely unnecessary.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I wrote an ebook one time for Lane. I don't know if you know the what do they call World Schoolers from Project World School, Laney Liberty. She
No.
takes people all over the country and stuff.
Wow.
Could you write something that will encourage people to leave their curriculum at home
Amen,
so
sister.
that they can like immerse themselves in this?
Yes.
So I have this little ebook called Everything Counts. And it helped them see all the different ways that you can get these subjects. If you mentally need to check those boxes, let me help you see how they're already happening and you're just not counting it.
That I thought that was so cool when I saw that on your grid there. That is what I tell other people.
Right.
I mean, I've got a lot of people in my world that are already very unschooled, but then there are people like me. When I started homeschooling, I was very classically minded, like actual classical homeschooling with Susan Wise Bauer's
Oh
tome.
yeah.
And I mean, she gave me amazing ideas.
Yeah.
And so from that book, I could provide like oodles of curriculum ideas or different, approaches to different things at different stages of learning. But third year in, I picked up a book called, what is it? Why Children Fail by John Holt.
Mm-hmm.
Came across that one and I read it. And it, to be honest, it's kind of dry.
Yeah. It's
That one.
yeah. He was. It was, what was it, like the 70s or 80s? Yeah.
And then he just told me everything that was going on in his classroom because he's a school teacher
Right.
for those that haven't met him, but I'm sure you have. And then I'm like, well, if he thinks that kids don't benefit by learning in a traditional setting,
And
that
he's
it's
in it.
and he's in it and it's counterproductive in his opinion, then maybe the way that I'm doing this isn't the best way. And frankly, I've got all this freedom and here I am sitting my kids down from 8 to
Right.
3 every day.
Right.
And I mean, I know how to do that, girlfriend. Like I can actually help people do that. But like you, I'm like, how do you lean into child-led learning?
Right.
Partly for them and partly for your sanity.
Right. Well, and just the unnecessary aspect. It's just because it's familiar.
Yeah.
It's just the one way we all grew up with. So we think that is the way because we were always told that was the way. They certainly didn't allow for multiple right answers, heaven forbid. And so when we have all of those years telling us this is the way to do it, and then even after we leave, we have society saying, don't deviate, come on, don't rock the boat, don't get out, the sky will fall. It's really hard. It's really hard to deschool. And I think that sometimes too, in a lot of communities, people get the impression that deschooling is like a 2-week deal.
Yes.
Or a 1-month thing. And you're like,
or you can only do it in the beginning of your homeschool.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
in fact, like to me,
I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
Right.
Yeah, totally with you. I interviewed somebody on my podcast once. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And I love her deeply. And I love the stories that she was training that she was sharing. But she said, you can deschool definitively. And I'm like, I don't think you can. I
know. I mean, I can tell you with 100% confidence because you as a mom or a dad have never, okay, so you are homeschooling, unschooling your 6-year-old.
Yep. Yeah.
You're a 6-year-old and you do your deschooling then. And it's all play based and you're happy and it all seems to be okay because we're okay with letting 6-year-olds play.
Yes.
Your 6-year-old turns 10 and suddenly you're triggered because they don't know their sevens.
Right.
Or they just asked you what day comes after Thursday or something that you're like, gosh, we didn't cover that. And then suddenly, bam, 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 we've got to buckle down because when we get afraid, we want to control. And and then when we want to control, we only do what's familiar. And what's familiar is 10 years old. Was that 4th grade? Let's get some curriculum. And then you're like back to deschooling.
And
so I think it's waves. I think we get comfortable and then we become different. Our kids, they're always evolving, you know? So.
And that, what you're saying really ties into a common conversation point about trusting. That fear is directly related to trust. There's a connection there. And the more that you face the fear, ask yourself, why am I believing what I'm believing about this education thing? Or frankly, after a while, like you were kind of alluding to, it actually shifts everything about how you approach with everything over the course of time until you don't even realize how possibly weird you look because you are unaware.
Well, because when you started, didn't you start and you said, oh, I'd never do that. Oh, not that far. No, not me. And then years go by and you're like, oh, that's way behind me. I'm way past that.
And then you're in a public setting like I was a few weeks ago talking about deschooling and there's school teachers that are like, what? And you're like, oh, I guess that's weird.
Guys, your whole livelihood depends upon it. Yeah, you know, when you said about trust and John Holt before that, that's what he said was that we can't trust kids because we were always told not to trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when we bring that to the dynamic, no wonder. I mean, we have to learn that it'll be okay. There's no educational emergency. Yeah. We can simply enjoy ourselves. And then don't we always know that when we bring the anxiety down, mom's anxiety, dad's anxiety, kids' anxiety, our world opens up. We don't have the blinders on that we get because just biologically we're scared and but if we were like, relax, and suddenly you're like, oh yeah, let's just have a conversation about it. And why do I remember that? Because it was an easygoing way.
There really is. And it's really us getting out of our own way.
Right.
And over the last 4 years, when I'm officially writing stuff down and I'm officially coaching people and doing all this stuff, I realized the connection between deschooling, how we're homeschooling, however you want to call it, home educating, and also our purposeful living. That we tend to move towards more purposeful living, which is very defined by your unique self. And so you do it with your kids. You look at your child and you say, oh, they're going down a rabbit trail. We should allow them to go down that rabbit trail. Encourage that. And then you start to go, and what about me? Maybe I also get to do a few cool things that are uniquely me.
Yeah, because you're allowed to.
Yeah.
I think that's really sometimes really eye-opening for a lot of people that they like, oh, I'd started with it just for subjects.
Yes.
And then, well, it kind of applies to teeth brushing too, or it kind of applies to food or chores was my last one to let go because I thought, if we don't have chores, these animals are going to die.
You got access to.
Yeah. And so I was like, I can't embrace this unschooling idea for everything. Only to then start to learn that it's really not about just saying kids do it. It's about partnering with them.
Right.
It's like we lived on a ranch, and as we're driving home, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start dinner. Who's going to bring the hose down to put water out for, and then we're just working together, and we don't have to have a choice. We know what needs to be done.
You know what? I appreciate too what Marianne said. She said she just met her Irish relatives for the first time, which is so cool. I want to join you when you're vacationing in Ireland. So when when your 15-year-old was asked about what his favorite subjects are, he said video games and trampolining. I love that. I love trampolining too, by the way, Marianne. And I have had different questions that, the random public or family members will ask my kids. And I'm like, oh my goodness,
Right.
the wrong answer. But then when not really that it's a wrong answer, but my instinct is,
right.
Oh, what are people thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's a reflection on us, right? And then we get a little bit, they're going to judge me. And then, or they're going to judge my most precious thing in my whole life, this kid of mine. And so I don't want them to have a bad thought about them. So lots of times in my coaching groups, I talk to them about preparing ahead of time when you're going to be out there. So things like, what's your favorite subject? You know that subject's, that question's coming. So if you play video games, you there's math or there's history or there's reading. Pick one of those and tell them, oh, I love it because when I do my video game, my vocabulary's through the roof. I mean, they probably wouldn't say that, but they might say, I do a ton of math. I've learned so much math, or I learned to read playing Minecraft. Crazy, right? And you just, when you help the kids attach those subjects to the things they're playing or doing, then they're not kind of in the hot seat.
Right. Yes. I know that some of my kids actually grew to not even answer the question directly, like, oh, is school's not happening today? And they're like, nope. Or, are you in, what grade are you in? Like, which,
right.
I have no idea. So I just look to the child. And so then the child says grade 9, and we don't really, adhere to grades. Sometimes they get tired of that. But for me, when people would ask goofy questions, I'll just call them that, then my instinct in the beginning was to get really defensive. But over the course of time, I realized one of two things, typically. One is that people just don't know, and they've not heard. We're living off the beaten path here, so we shouldn't be shocked that they don't know. And so sometimes the other thing is that they care and they aren't able to, like, they sometimes care about our kids. They're worried about what the negative possibilities or repercussions could be. And so they just want to voice the I care about your child thing. And then sometimes people just need to stop, and we need to learn how to learn not to care what other people think.
Right. And we, you can't blame them. They've had all those years of everybody kind of alienate the person that gets out of line. Oh, well, y'all are going to have to stay in from recess because Johnny was doing this in the classroom. So suddenly the conformity aspect is incredibly important. And so when you're deviating, then there can be all kinds of stories for them. Like, well, is that what I'm doing is wrong? You think you're better than me? You think you're smarter than me? All that kind of almost bullying language that pops up to try to get everybody to get back in line.
Yeah. There is definitely that in our culture. And
I have a question. If I click this send to, will it? No, it just sends people. It doesn't send. Never mind. I was touching it and I thought I'm gonna tell her before I do it because I don't want to disappear. I was seeing if I could send it to my stories or live, but I don't know.
I think it's automatically doing that.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
I love it.
So Nadia said, we also have farm animals and my teens love to work with them. Me too. We have goats and chickens, and we're right now trying to watch one of our Nubians to see if she's ready to meet her boyfriend that we have found in a neighboring town.
Wow.
She has not yet met her boyfriend. But anyways, my son has learned many things about all sorts of different things, animal related. And, the highly underrated skills, I think, is working with animals, knowing how to chop wood and, start fires and build goat barns and outbuildings and things. Very, very cool stuff to learn.
Mine did that. It was fun. And they did, when we lived in town and lived more suburban, they did things through Scouts or through 4-H, and they were able to have all kinds of experiences. People always think, oh, it's going to be so limited, and there's just no.
The exact opposite.
I remember too my kids saying, why do they call it homeschool? We're never home.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah.
I actually learned understood Pythagorean theorem for the first time, like really understood it when we were building that goat barn. And so many, just like you were sharing on your profile or in one of those posts that in the beginning, when we're trying to lean into child-led learning and all we can think about is, did we do math today? Or did we do, history or whatever subject? Actually watch what your children do and write it down maybe for a week. Write it down and say, what are they actually doing and what could that translate into? The various kinds of writing that they might do. Maybe they're writing the directions to, a game, like something in their gaming system or whatever. They're writing that down, but that is writing.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of ways that people just have to open up and not be afraid. Because if you just did like a column of the activities and then you think, is there a little bit of literature? Is there a little bit of reading? Is there a little bit of writing? A little bit of math? And a lot of times our brain will quickly flip over to, but that's not enough to count. And you're like, no, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about touch points for it, because all those touch points add up. And now, we're so convinced of that classroom, 45 minutes of something is what you've got to do to be able to count it. And really, no, it all adds up together.
And in like a high school experience, like in a public school or any sort of brick and mortar school, you might be doing some more formal things in 45 minutes. Maybe even you have a 2-hour block of a class. And frankly, they're trying to force feed content. And that doesn't mean that you are able as a person to really absorb what's going on and, really engage that content. It could be theoretically overwhelming, if not just overstimulating in an environment that really isn't supportive to learning. Like, I don't know about you, but I have some kids that really would prefer to be in their bedroom and to do their thing independently, and having a lot of other noise and other people around them is actually not useful.
Yeah, I think that I think that's especially important when you're having to do things that weren't your idea. So you're trying to hold on to it for as long as you can. They're probably not going to retain it. How much do I retain from my years of school? Not a lot, unless it was something I continued to use all along. So all those years of algebra 1, algebra 2, all those different things, the only thing I really remember and use is ratio and proportion. I use that a lot. I don't have this and I have that and I have this much of, and I can do that ratio and proportion because that's it. And I think that's the thing to always remember. When I first got a glimmer of that was when my daughters knew their three, like this, their threes times tables, but none of the others. And it was because Girl Scout cookies were $3 a box and they were selling them. And they're like 369, and they were like the top of the chart.
Yeah, that's
cookie
brilliant.
seller, but they knew their threes. And I'm like, because it's relevant.
Yes, exactly. And so you are probably helping people also transition into high school and moving. And so, because somehow there's this notion of it gets harder in high school. Personally, and I had 4 kids that are, just as everybody says, very different. Every single one of them did approach things differently, moving into sort of that grade 8, grade 9 stage. Some of them are naturally more academic.
I don't hear you. The volume went away.
But every single one of them, I found it was actually easier if you'd already been spending a long time trusting and really allowing them to be nourished in whatever interests they had, then it was actually easier in the high school years.
Right. We unschooled through high school. So we didn't shift gears. We didn't see a reason to. And so they continued on the path of exploring their interests. And it was scarier. I mean, I'm not going to lie, because everybody's like, you're going to buckle down now though, right?
Yep.
And I'm, no, I just think this still works. And it did. Now they're 34, 32, and 29. They got into colleges. They got grade schools. They own businesses. They bought homes. They did all the things. And they're not held back because they didn't do that traditional experience. Interestingly, my youngest did go to high school for a year and a half. In the middle of it, at age 15, she wanted to, we had done all the things. Like, you want to do the performing thing, we'll do community theater. You want to do cheerleading, well, there's competitive cheerleading, but she wanted to do drill team on the field of a football game. I couldn't make that. I didn't have football teams in my homeschooling. And so she made the mistake of telling me, I just don't think I'm smart enough to go to high school. I'm like, oh no, you're going. Even if you just go for a week, to see that is not, that's the farthest from the truth. And so she did fine. And this was a kid that had been totally animal conscious. She was always doing everything with animals, everything. We even had a pet birthday party where everyone brought their pet, including her dentist. So, I mean, it was wild, but it was animal driven. And then puberty hit, and it was hair and makeup driven, and a little bit boy crazy. And so the high school experience was something she wanted to see. Also, her older two had moved out. The older two siblings had moved, so it was a much quieter house. And so
my son
she went for a year and a half and got on the drill team so she could do that. That is a lot of drama, 150 girls in one thing. I think I've had enough, thanks. But she got, B's and C's, like even in algebra. And this was, honestly, for those who are thinking, oh, but you don't know how little my kid knows academically. No, I do know. She didn't know her times tables except for those 3s and the 5s and the 10s. That's probably it. And she didn't also know to go real fast about 5 and 5, 6 and 4, 7 and 3, 8 and 2. Those just weren't things that happened. But it didn't matter because in high school they let them use their calculator. And so she'd say, show me what you want. And they would show her and she could do it because, you can spit it back pretty fast. And then the quiz on Friday, if she didn't score well, they did extra credit. They rounded up. You got to retest for a 70. And so she's like, I don't have the faintest idea about any of it, but they passed me on. And that's just how it works. So I remember always being afraid, thinking, what if they have to go to school? They're really not academic kiddos. And my least academic kiddo of all 3 did just fine. And then left and went on to cosmetology school, and now she owns a hair salon where people work for her, and she runs payroll, and she writes all your procedure manuals, and she didn't need those things.
That's often the concern, is that, but what about college? Like, how are you going to get into college? And I know even from my experience, because I was traditionally schooled and I didn't have the prereqs to go into my nursing degree. And when they interviewed me, so I got in on interview because she liked me and because she knew I cared about this thing, which, by the way, is often how you're going to get another college kiddo into something, one of the elements. And it was my experience too with my daughter who went into ballet school. And so then I am not ready for all these prereqs. I'm supposed to have chemistry 12 or math 12, like the final year of high school. And I'm like, oh man, I don't have that. Well, they said, well, you can do it alongside your nursing degree. And I went, okay, I'm scared spitless, but okay, I'll do it. And I did it because I had to. And also I did really well and surprised myself.
It's amazing the difference between somebody that's 18 or 19 versus somebody 15 or 16.
Exactly.
There's just a huge jump in maturity and focus. You wanted it, as opposed to somebody saying, someday you'll need that. And you're like, no, I won't. And then you've got all that.
There's no magic number about 18 getting into high school either. And I think that, again, like, that's a deschooled, like, the way we live life is so off the beaten path that we also, I don't know about you, but I don't think like you have to be in college at 18 and then what? Then you finish by 21. Then you have to have a certain kind of, I don't know, master's, PhD, or you have to have a 6-figure income or a 2-car garage. And then when you're 65, you retire. Like, why do we have to do it a certain way?
Right. We don't. at all,
Yeah.
at all. Especially if you think about it from our standpoint, from an unschooling standpoint, it's about individualizing. Everything is all about individualizing. So why would we suddenly not individualize our life anymore?
Yeah.
You know, of course we would continue to do that. But I think that lots of times people are still thinking that school way of, if you don't do these things, doors are going to close and you will miss the boat. And I'm here to say it's not true, because you could take community college classes. I had one that took community college classes. He did fine on them. And then he took his 15 credit hours and transferred to a university where he was magna cum laude and then has an MBA. And, you know, so there's that. I had another one that took assessments. Bomb.
Yeah.
Terrible. She had only done acting and dance and voice for like, and she wrote a little fan fiction. And so she did that during her teen years. It was really fun, and we traveled, but she wasn't doing academic stuff. And so when she took the assessment, she did bad. She came back home. She's like, I'm just going to work for a while. I'm like, all right. And then we went back because she wanted to go to college. And the counselor said, you know, you don't have to take that test again. I can just put you in the classes that you score. And, you know, they don't call it remedial, but the rest of us kind of think of it as developmental or remedial or something, but they don't call it that. They just call it like 0032 English as opposed to 0102, you know. And it's a pass or fail thing. And she took 3 semesters of math, 2 semesters of reading, and writing, and 1 semester of reading, and then was fine. Ask me about the quadratic equation. I know it. And she's, one of the things that she said that I thought was really interesting was that her classroom was full of people who had gone to 12 years of school and they still needed the remedial.
Exactly.
And so she said, I had this great life. And then at 19, I took, maybe she was 18 or 19. She took these community college classes. And then in the end, she didn't really want to go to college, but she went to the New York Film Academy. And they said, oh, community college classes, we don't care about your high school. This shows you passed. And, you know, let's let her in. And the interview then was, you know, and auditioning, those kinds of things. So,
you know, I don't know what you know about my story, but I've got 4 kids, varying paths. And my oldest was somebody that absolutely is the reason I began unschooling, because I found engaging her academically was so challenging, and she just didn't want to be told what to do at all. And just really independent, strong-minded personality, and super smart.
right.
Interested, fully engaged in whatever she was doing, but not necessarily interested in traditional academics. So by the time she's in grade 9, she's like, you know what, I'd like to go to school. And I was like, whoa, what? Like, we don't do school. School is like, we don't do that. And then it took me 1.5 years after I required an essay. Yes, I did. And then I said, okay, I'm going to have to lean into the fact that she's not me and not living my big adventure here. And so then she did. By the time she was in grade 10, as soon as she got in, she's like, I want out. So she finished 3 years in 2 years, and now is still in post-secondary school because she wants to do a child psychology, a clinical child psychology program. And so somebody you would think would 100% be locked into unschool, or into a very alternative unschool kind of approach, absolutely was. She locked into living her life on purpose, and now she's doing it on her own terms.
Right. Yeah. My oldest was also the reason we did this. And he went to school for kindergarten and first grade. And he was just a typical rambunctious little 6 or 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And he could read ahead of time because he was just like a sponge. And so he would be in trouble for not reading in unison off the chalkboard, or dueling with pencils in the back of the room because he was bored. They're like, we think he needs ADHD medicine. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that your playground is under construction and they have to play quietly between 2 buildings. And this is a kid that needs to run a few laps around the buildings. Like, you know what? I can do 3rd grade. Let's see. They'll always take us back. Let's just take a little break and give him time to play a little bit more. That was my intent at the beginning. And as we did it, then we started to let go of more and more schooly things. And so by the time he was in his teens, he was a foreign exchange student in Japan. He got to live all kinds of things he wanted to do. And then when he discovered he wanted to be in the Peace Corps, they make you have a degree. And so he's, well, guess I'm going to get one. I'm like, oh, and he did. And he did really well at it because he wanted to.
I love that.
Just how that goes.
I love that. I hope these stories have been bolstering for whoever is in the trenches of trying to figure out how to lean it.
Well, yeah, because if they're
real.
power struggling, I hate to think of people power struggling when you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's just fear trying to let go. And instead, inform yourself more of all the ways that people could actually live and be successful, because you'll be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, ask the question, what is an education anyways? And because I did the classical homeschooling, the root word of education is educato, which means to raise up. And what are we raising up? What's the intention behind raising up? Is it raising up the child, or is it raising up an education system? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the homeschool?
Just that unschooling works. Don't be afraid. Yeah. It sounds weird, and I get it. And you may not even want to call it that to anybody in your real world. But it's okay, because the premise is kind of like attachment parenting, but continues on. Why I remember thinking, why does this end at age 5? You continue to prioritize the connection and fuel your kids' interests. It's not a passive sit on your hands, hope they come up with something. Yeah. It's helping them find the resources to live the life they want to live.
Amen. Love it.
It's so doable. So I have Unschooling, Mom2Mom.com.
Yeah.
I have a podcast. I have YouTube. Yeah. I have all the social media stuff. So reach out if you need help. I got a million things. Yeah. we started in 1996, and I'm a writer. So I've been. Yeah. I have a lot of things to help.
We have a lot in common. I knew I get lost in the DMs chatting with so many people, so I'm really glad we got to chat. I knew we should chat.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah.
Now tell me, how old are your kids right now?
Oh, always the hardest question in a mother's.
I know. Yeah. I remember being at a conference, speaking at a conference, and I said my kids' ages, and one of their friends from the back of the room said, "Nuh-uh. No, they're not." I'm like, shoot.
So can I say 22 and a half? Yeah. Like, you want years or months? Just kidding. 22 and a half, 20, almost 21, 18, and almost 15.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
beautiful life. It has been a beautiful life.
I love that.
So where I've come from is very much the mother side of it. I wrote a book in 2018, published it in April 2020, started a podcast a month before the pandemic, which is perfect timing. And then have been building into the life coaching realm over that 4 years. And so I see the connection, the deschooling, unschooling, and living your life on purpose, a direct line for mom and kids. Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful.
And nobody really told us that we could do that. So I like it that you're helping figure that out.
Yeah. It's a beautiful life. Yeah. Well, let's chat again. And it was a lovely.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. And then
me too. I'm glad to meet you.
Keep in touch.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon.
All
Okay.
right,
bye, everybody.